Welcome back. Well, Florida Gubernatorial candidate Paul Renner hosted a press conference in Tampa yesterday, pledging to keep Florida free from Sharia law and radical Islam, two very good ideas, by the way. And so he reaffirmed a commitment to protect Florida from any attempt of foreign or extremist systems, including Sharia law, undermining the U.S. Constitution or imposing foreign legal doctrines within the state. Renner said, quote, Sharia law is antithetical to every foundational tenet of our Constitution and is not compatible with the American way of life. As governor, I will protect every Floridian from the threat posed by radical Islam. Florida must draw a hard line. Our laws, our Constitution, and our values are not negotiable. So Paul Renner joins me now. And Paul, I couldn't agree more. And this is something that I think, the left wants to just kind of turn a blind eye to and suggest that somehow, Sharia law falls under First Amendment religious protections. They're not looking at the truth of the matter, which is that Sharia law is a parallel legal system that fundamentally conflicts with the U.S. Constitution.
Well, that's exactly right. And I posted a Muslim student here in America who said that Islam as a system can never coexist with any other system, Christianity, Judaism, American constitutionalism. And I agree with him. And so if there's only 1 out of 1,000 Muslims in America that may be radicalized and may commit violence against Americans, isn't that too many? And as governor of the state of Florida, I have to protect and will protect our citizens from a system that ultimately cannot mix with the American constitutional system. And that's not a statement of animosity. It's a statement of fact, just looking over the 1,000+ years where Islam has mixed with non-Muslim nations. It has led to conflict, division, and ultimately violence. And we need to be honest about it. I'm someone running for office that's not afraid to stand up and speak the truth, even if it means the media calls me an Islamophobe or whatever they're going to do. But again, they're not going to defend the constitutional republic. I will.
Yeah, and this is something that is incredibly important to me as a Floridian, and also I think for everyone listening in the rest of the country that is looking at, the Congressional Sharia Law Caucus. They're looking at, Republicans as a whole to take this very seriously. And, it would be the same thing as saying, just as a statement of fact, not animosity, that, vigilante justice or taking, matters into our own hands outside of the American legal system and our justice system has no place in America. I mean, this isn't something that is even Sharia law or Muslim specific. This is just saying we have a U.S. constitutional system. That is our process. That's our law here in America. And anything to the contrary is not permitted. That shouldn't even be controversial.
Right, and to allow any other system, whether it's Sharia or some other system, as you described, to grow in this country and grow in our state is to accept the end of our way of life, to accept the end of our constitutional system that has made us the freest, strongest, most prosperous nation in world history. And we're simply not going to allow that here in the free state of Florida. I helped build it when I was Speaker of the House, and we're going to protect it, keep it free, keep it safe, and obviously make it more affordable.
And according to your press conference yesterday and the press release, and by the way, for anyone listening, you can go to voterenner.com to learn more. But you've pledged to pursue a series of aggressive measures as governor, including restricting immigration, no parallel legal systems, as we've talked about, strict oversight of taxpayer funding, identifying and restricting extremist or terrorist organizations, among a few other things. These are priorities that, again, shouldn't be controversial, but your primary opponent, Byron Donalds, doesn't seem to be taking as aggressive of a stance. Why do you think that is? Is he just afraid to offend?
Well, I think he is speaking the talking points of his donors, whether that's populating the state of Florida with AI data centers or making Florida the finance capital of the world, which is being called for by exactly no voters in the state of Florida. I can tell you because I'm out listening to them. He is really someone who is bought and paid for by his donors, and Florida's not for sale. He's talking about issues that they care about in which they can make money. He's not talking talking about making Florida more affordable. That's going to be my day one priority. As a former prosecutor, the only prosecutor in the race, I will keep us safe, including with respect to Sharia law, sex trafficking, other things that threaten us, public corruption, and keep it free. I helped build the free state of Florida with Governor DeSantis, and he didn't show up for those fights, whether it's Amendment 3 and 4, the pot and abortion amendment. None of these guys showed up. And my friends, doing a tweet against it is not leadership. You've got to show up, campaign. The governor did that. I did that. And if you want someone who's going to lead like Governor DeSantis, you're talking to him.
Yeah, and this is really important, not just for the free state of Florida, but I think for the entire country, where Florida goes after Governor DeSantis's term ends, because Florida has, especially since COVID, we've seen how important it is to have governors on the state level that are willing not to just stand up against, a federal narrative, but to actually use the powers of the governor's office for freedom and for good. And so this is a really important election, I think, not just as a Floridian, but also as a conservative, the most important gubernatorial election in the country this year because it's following Governor DeSantis. And so, with those priorities, how do you see the priorities of this race with your candidacy compared to your opponents? Chiefly, I think it's a two-man race between you and Byron Donalds.
Well, it goes to leadership background, 20 years in the military. I served in 2 wars, former prosecutor, small business owner, and Speaker of the House. And it goes to results. As Speaker of the House and Governor DeSantis said this recently a couple times, that those 2 years when I led the legislature were the 2 most consequential conservative legislative terms of any legislature in the country at any time, which is a nice compliment. And so if you want someone like this governor that leans in, too many Republican governors just take whatever comes to their desk. They sign a bill, they veto a bill, they do some press conferences. What I love about this governor is he's taken the fight to the left and beaten them. I mentioned Amendment 3 and 4, another area where he and I partnered alone, none of these other candidates, is on school board races to make sure we have common sense conservatives. We're not allowing the destruction of parental rights. We had a kid that was being transitioned at a school, at a public school, change her name to a boy's name, give her different clothes, and never tell the parents. This is a governor that won't stand for that. I won't stand for that, and I've got a record to prove it. Nobody has the results that I have when it comes to fighting for the conservative cause and delivering over and over again. And I think that's because, as a veteran, I know we have to focus on the mission, get the ego and arrogance out of it, and do your job. We don't see that happening now in the legislature. We need renewed leadership there, obviously, but as governor, I will lead and deliver over and over again.
Yeah, and Governor DeSantis even said that on this show to me about your tenure as Speaker, that during that time it was the best Republican term in the Republican Party's history. And that's saying quite a lot, and about what conservatives can actually accomplish, not to just be on defense the whole time. If we're not also playing offense and pushing conservative priorities and policies, then we're not actually advancing to become a more perfect union. We're only defending, and we should defend, obviously, against, like you said, the pot bill and the abortion tourism amendments. Both of those amendments would have been terrible for Florida, and yet we see that there are other so-called Republicans, and I would categorize Byron Donalds as a Republican in name only. But then even one of your other opponents, Jay Collins, who's the current lieutenant governor, who's been on this show frequently. I've seen him in the past. When last year when Governor DeSantis appointed him, it seemed like he might be the guy. But I think that his candidacy has really, fallen pretty far because he just doesn't seem to be able to articulate the policy, and he doesn't have those policy wins that someone like you does. And when you look at the last couple of polls that were polling actual voters, straw polls, but in 2 different counties in Florida, you won even over Byron Donalds by a really wide margin. And I think that speaks to people in Florida who are actively engaged in politics, who understand your track record as the Speaker of the House. What does that suggest to you about the view of the other candidates' track records by comparison?
Well, that when we get a fair comparison, we're going to win this race, and maybe by a lot. It doesn't look like that in the polls because they're polling the name you know. Byron Donalds has been on TV every single day. He's been in Congress, not showing up to vote, of course, but he's been on TV raising his name ID, and that's all that the statewide polls reflect. But when you look at people on the ground, grassroots Republicans in a Republican club or a Republican executive committee in a county like Duval, where you mentioned we won by 58%, Donald's got 28%, Collins, you mentioned, got 8%. And so when people draw that fair comparison and look at all the candidates as they're doing now at that level, they're choosing us overwhelmingly because they see someone like DeSantis who's a fighter, who's shown up and beaten the left everywhere they raise their head. And that is exactly what I will do. And so if you want a continuation of the great 7+ years we've had for the next 8, you've got a candidate. Go to voterenner.com. We'd love to have your support. Volunteer, help us out, and we'd love to see you out there on the campaign trail.
And you can also follow Paul Renner on X at Paul_Renner. He also has a War Room account. And, the concern as well that I have as a Floridian with someone like Byron Donalds, if he were to get the nomination, he is a really weak candidate. And we've seen, the Trump-endorsed candidates, unfortunately, oftentimes being the weakest. And it's possible under that type of nomination that the Democrat who, the front runner, who is actually a former Republican, now running as a Democrat, running as a moderate, may have an opportunity to take Florida for the Democrats. I mean, we just saw the elections last night. Unfortunately, the special election that went to the Democrats. That was an upset that hopefully Republicans will fix in November. But, it's wild to me, Paul, that we may have a Republican nominee in Byron Donalds who is a former Democrat and then a Democrat nominee who's a former Republican. I mean, that just seems overwhelmingly confused. Why not just pick the solid conservative Republican with the actual priorities that are in the best interests of Florida that can actually follow Governor DeSantis?
Well, we saw this in North Carolina with someone who was endorsed, and they lost by 20 points when it came out that they had, major porn issues, and they lost and brought a lot of good Republicans with them. Byron Donalds has done nothing in office other than self-promote, get rich in office, and have fun. And he has not shown up to deliver wins for conservatives. And that people are tired of that. And so when they look at him, whether it's in the primary, he's going to lose the primary, but God forbid should he become the nominee, he could absolutely lose this election. Last night's results show that. We're losing independents. Republicans are deflated. And if they see someone who has become a grifter in political office, as Congressman Donalds is, they will not show up, and we will lose this election to a Democrat. And you want to talk about a change from Governor DeSantis, it's the beginning of the end. Don't assume that Florida is always going to be the way it is. It's the way it is because we have a great governor. It's the way it is because I was there also as a legislative leader to help build the free state of Florida. We can't go backwards. That's what this election is about. And I will lead like this governor has, and God forbid we have somebody like Donalds at the top of the ticket.
Yeah, well said. And, freedom is just one generation away. And I would, as Reagan said, but in Florida, continuing the free state of Florida is just one election away. And it's incredibly important, not just for Florida, but for the rest of the country. So thanks so much, Paul Renner. And as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna at afr.net.